Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Complete Game Podcast, episode 95, heading to the century mark. I'm your host, Curt Schilling. He is your co-host and the show's producer, Curt Schilling. What's up, G?
Not much. We got some news as we approach baseball season. We're about a month out.
Yep, we're going to talk in depth a little bit later on about the news out of baseball today and regarding Tony Clark. But last show, I tasked you with homework. Wanted you to look up, check out, since I'm such an opposition voice in pitchers going to the WBC, but I asked you to look at the past history of some guys in the WBC and what their seasons were like. What'd you find?
Yeah, so I went through and I have the statistics from the WBC. For people that don't know, I mean, the most usage any of these guys saw was, I believe, 9 2/3, and that was from Shohei.
Right.
As you'll see, obviously, and I don't need to tell you this, Shohei Ohtani is an anomaly when it comes to a lot of these statistics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took the year before. So obviously the WBC we'll be discussing took place in 2023. So these are year before and after statistics, obviously the year 2023 as well, where you'll see a lot of common themes where guys' numbers will drop off either directly in 2023 or the year after. These 8th and 9th, 3rd and 4th markings, you'll see that's personal career for these guys. So like some of the guys like Jose Barrios on the younger end and on better teams like the Blue Jays that are trending upward, obviously their numbers are largely unaffected as long as they keep a consistent work around 170 to 190 innings. Yeah. And then Edwin Diaz would be on the other end of something like that, where he didn't pitch as much. He participated in 2 games, only threw 2 innings, and he was lights out during the World Baseball Classic, but he suffered an injury during spring training. So that's sort of, up to speculation where that gets into him revving up his schedule earlier in the year. And then he obviously had an uncharacteristic year the year after that, according to his numbers. That's just one example. And then moving on to the DR and Venezuela, we had a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher I tried to keep in that spirit when we're talking about all these. Here we had another anomaly with Sandy Alcantara, who was the 2022 NL Cy Young winner, obviously. So an anomaly year. He probably not going to keep that up in the following year, but he also he missed the entire 2024 season. I forget what the reasoning was off the top of my head, but
arm surgery,
yeah, I think he was one of the elbow surgery guys.
Yep.
But yeah,
he had a bad 2023, 7-12, 4-1-4 after winning the Cy.
Uncharacteristic after he also didn't pitch well in the World Baseball Classic too, so that you could argue that was something he tried to battle through all year or whatnot.
Right.
But and then
Alvarado.
Yep, Alvarado would be another case where he started to pitch well going into the World Baseball Classic. He actually pitched decently throughout the World Baseball Classic too, which is probably why he saw an increased workload going forward for the Phillies.
Right.
And then these are more in-depth statistics that show over the couple of years, like so WAR, WHIP, and I did strikeouts per 9, where all of these guys that we just talked about, except for Barrios on the younger end, started to decline after the year of the World Baseball Classic. So, but nothing major outside the guys that suffered injuries. These ones weren't as big of anomalies. And moving on to the U.S. team, we saw a little bit more of what I was talking about with the older versus younger. Merrill Kelly, for example, an older guy. Devin Williams, a younger guy, a relief pitcher. Both saw pretty even usage, 1 innings difference in the World Baseball Classic. Again, I think it's more so what I found throughout this experiment or research, I should say, is that it's the older these guys are, the having to get up fully ramped up to October or mid-June workload before the season starts makes it tough.
Yeah. Yep.
So Merrill Kelly, as you can see, dropped off significantly and missed significant time in 2024 due to injuries, a bunch of weird injuries too, on top of that. And then Devin Williams has had I would say a good stretch. 2024, he seemed to struggle a little bit. That's when he got moved. And then we had Adam Wainwright and Daniel Bard, both older guys who Wainwright ended up retiring, which I think that was kind of, that seemed like it made sense anyways for the timing of it. He wasn't on, as you can see, like he wasn't producing like the Adam Wainwright that I grew up and remember. And then Daniel Bard was a more curious case. He actually got he didn't get used really at all in the World Baseball Classic, but he was coming off a career year in 2022. He was selected for the team in the offseason, and then he struggled throughout 2023, and a freak knee injury in the spring training following has kept him out. He didn't play last year either, and he's still trying to make a comeback. So he's one of the
Yeah.
more peculiar cases throughout all this that I figured.
Yeah.
These guys also had, like I said, these are more in-depth numbers, science pitch.
Right. Yeah. No, interesting. Makes sense. The younger, older disparities. But you know, I was more focused on. Okay.
I got
Good.
more. You can keep going though.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I was more. I'm more in tune with that season. Like, you know, I think 2024 and after, for the 2023 guys that pitched, I'm more concerned with the season, right? What they did during that year, because I think that's where it impacts you, and it's showing. It did. I mean, there's some. Darvish is another one.
Yep, Darvish was. I was going to say Darvish is one of the only guys on the Japanese team too, other than Shohei, who had pitched throughout and all in Major League Baseball. Shohei
Right.
spent the 1 year when he moved to the Dodgers where he didn't pitch. It was interesting to see, looking at the Japanese pitchers, how, and you'll notice where I have the games started for Yoshi and Roki, that they don't have like a game started, I guess. I don't know if they track the stat differently. It was harder to get their Japan stats, but the workload was already sort of, I don't know how they do it over in Japan, but it seems either more managed or they play less games, because the way that the Dodgers, especially, you see how they handled Shohei's transition after his elbow surgery.
Games. They have a shorter schedule over there.
The Dodgers have that luxury, and they had an understanding clearly of how these guys were functioning before they invested in them, which makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, obviously Shohei is an anomaly in all of this. I mean, he was an MVP twice.
Well,
the
other thing
or
too
3 times.
is don't go to sleep on the fact that the Japanese pitchers are raised with a much heavier workload inherently. That's why I think they age out faster. You know, they come over here and the level of competition is elevated, and they're asking and pushing their bodies harder than they did in Japan, and they're not changing their routines. And I think that's a huge red flag. But obviously Shohei, again, yeah, he's different, and I'm sure he takes care of his arm and everything that goes with that. But you know, you're looking at, I mean, if you remember Daisuke, I think that he threw like over 200 pitches in the high school championship, which is like our college World Series.
Yeah.
He threw like 180 pitches in a Friday to get to the finals, and then came in relief the next day. You know, they are all about throwing. And Byung Kim was the first guy for me that I got exposed to how it ended their in my opinion, ends their big league career earlier, because some of them just couldn't make the adjustment. They couldn't work less or throw less. And it was a part of, I mean, BK used to hide. He used to go and throw like out of sight of people. And we tried to emphasize, you know, throw less. And it's just something they grow up with. And it's not a viable tactic here. You can't do it. You can't tax your arm that much and pitch in the big leagues that often.
Well, I think in looking at this too, like I said, the Dodgers in particular had the luxury. Lance Lynn was another guy who saw a lot of usage in the who wasn't included here, who had to research on, who went from the White Sox to the Dodgers in that time. And even though he didn't have a career year for his standard, I would say, like, they were able to limit his usage and get the most out of him, which again we saw with them putting Roki in the bullpen and the various things they did throughout the playoffs, and last year with their overflow of pitching.
Right.
So yeah, that was what I think it for guys 32 and above. Marcus Stroman was another one. We talked about Merrill Kelly and Adam Wainwright.
Right.
But it seems to affect
something
guys
we're going to pay attention to this year. We're going to pay attention league wide to all those numbers, because you know, and I've said it over and over again, I'm on two sides of the coin. I'm on both sides of the coin. As a player, I would be demanding to be allowed to play. But as someone on the other side of things, oh God, I would not ever want my pitchers to go there, especially young guys who don't have that emotional control. And I just think there's no upside to it. But it's good for baseball, and that's the counter. And I get it. But if I'm the Dodgers, my God, I do everything I can do to make sure Shohei Ohtani doesn't play in the World Baseball Classic. Sasaki as well, and there's only so much you can do. And like I said, I'm this is probably more of I'm the older get off my lawn guy now, but
I was just trying to go ahead.
I
Sorry.
want what's good for no, I want what's good for baseball, and baseball isn't better with Shohei Ohtani not playing both pitching and hitting, and baseball's not better if Sasaki isn't coming on and coming into his own over here. And the World Baseball Classic doesn't do anything for any of them. And like I said, we'll follow it this year. We'll follow it closely, and we'll pay attention to the guys that pitch in the Classic. And I don't care how many innings you throw in the World Base. That's irrelevant to me. It's the workload of getting to that level of competitive energy, 6 or 8 weeks faster than everybody else.
That's also why I mentioned like they pitched in 2 games, 3 games, some of these guys, because it's not just you're getting ready for a start, you're getting ready for multiple starts before you go through the whole like period of time where you're supposed to be ramping up. And then
the other big thing to me is I would be very concerned if I was the Dodgers or the Blue Jays about any of my pitchers who had a much shorter winter. And I wouldn't, it's like, and maybe you're being a little overcautious, which is fine, but like you Savage with the Blue Jays, I would have he didn't have an enormous workload last year comparatively speaking, but for his personal career numbers he did. And also the last 30, 40 innings of his season were the hardest and the most taxing. So, and I was always very conscious of that when we went to the postseason, pushing my off-season workout back X amount of time to make sure. And I don't know if it's, 6 weeks and 4 days or if it's 3 weeks and 9 hours. I don't know what that number is, but you have to find a way. I would never change the things I did to get ready for spring training, because I showed up at spring training, and my off-season throwing program was all about workload. I was ready to go. What happens on the first day of camp is most of your pitchers will throw 10 to 12 minutes of batting practice and work their workload up. That was a joke to me when I was ready to pitch. And so, there were opening days where I went 8 and 9 innings because I worked in the off season to be ready to pitch innings during the season. And I had my next to last outing in spring training was usually 100 to 110 pitches, which nowadays it's unheard of. They don't do that during the regular season. But for me, it was because I didn't want an artificial limit on my production. I didn't want someone to say, okay, he's at 100. And the game's evolved and changed immensely. I don't want to say evolved in the sense that it's not. I don't think all the changes are good, but it's different now. And like I said, I'm a firm opponent of my pitchers being in the WBC. So, but again, we'll follow it this year. We'll see it, and hopefully we're wrong and nobody ends up getting hurt and all the things that go with that. But I don't think we will be.
I'll make a point for both. I think that for the WBC, that if it's going to succeed, it needs to have the Scoobles and the Skeens of the sport for it to be successful. So everyone needs to be all in or not. We can't look like Latvia or France or one of these countries filling in our hockey team at the Olympics when we show up to the World Baseball Classic as the USA.
I think also, I think Scooble and Skeens will give us a little insight because Scooble's 30 and Skeens is a young 20-something.
Yeah.
Right? So it'll be different. And if I'm the Tigers, I'm concerned. And if I'm Scooble, he's going to make $32 million this year, and he's going to be a free agent next year, and all the things that go with that. And he's taking a big gamble on himself. And God willing, I hope it works out. But looking at those numbers,
to make my point on the devil's advocate side, your side of the owners saying, like, I wouldn't let them within 100 feet of the tournament is, I don't know. We talk about other sports on this show sometimes. I don't know if you remember Kevin Fiala a few days ago in the Olympics.
Yeah. Yep.
The Kings just made a major trade for Artemi Panarin
to get
to push themselves into a playoff position, and then bam, 2 weeks
Yep.
later, one of their top
I
forwards goes out for the rest of the
I
year.
almost feel like there's a little Raymond Bourque in this, in that they have their captain is skating in his last season, and they're trying to bring a cup, and so they brought Panarin in, and all the things that go with that, and now Fiala, one of the younger, better players in the NHL, they're done. He's done. Now that you don't necessarily, if you have no chance at the Stanley Cup or a championship after one player gets hurt, you weren't built for it anyway. But I think they're kind of built for it. I think that they were legitimately someone who could say, hey, if we get into the playoffs and our goaltenders stand up, we're good.
To bring it back to baseball, the Kings are not the Dodgers or the Blue Jays, right? Like they need every single guy.
The Kings are like the Red Sox.
They need everyone.
Right.
They're going to need
the Kings
Roman
are like the
Anthony.
Phillies or the Red Sox.
And they lost Roman Anthony.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a good,
which is exactly
analogy.
where they were last year, and they got their ass kicked.
Right. No, so yeah, so that'll be curious to follow, and the other, and this probably won't be a long episode, but I do want to take a couple minutes to talk about the news that came out today. That is, Tony Clark, the head of the Major League Baseball Players Association, has resigned amidst allegations of misappropriation of funds and other stuff. And if you've listened to this show at all, you know I don't know Tony beyond having competed against him and as a player, never heard any bad things about it. He's apparently a phenomenal guy, a great teammate. I have never been a fan of his job as head of the players union. I don't think he's done a good job. I think things have gone backwards since he's taken over, but this is just disappointing to me. Number one, because I'm so tired of trying to see somebody do it right and abide by the law. And I'm not saying he's guilty of anything, but you don't resign if you didn't do anything wrong. And that's not to mean he's guilty. I mean, maybe I don't know, but this is probably going to be, I'm predicting a significant amount of time could be taken away from the 2027 season. I think you're going to see an off season this year that will be almost non-existent, because I think they'll shut the game down. And I think the owners, I don't know who they're talking. I think Marty Brenner is the guy. I can't remember. I probably got his name wrong. He's the guy that apparently is in line to probably take over the Players Association. I don't know him, but I don't see the game coming back online in 2027 without a salary cap now.
And imagine how much of a bummer that would be if everything goes right with the WBC. It's a big hit, like the Four Nations was for hockey, and you somehow get a World Series that lives up to the one that last year was, and then nothing.
Yeah.
That would suck.
Yep. I mean, listen, it took 4 or 5 years for the game to recover from the 1994 lockout. Canceled the World Series, and it took Cal Ripken playing in 14,000 consecutive games, and it took McGuire and Sosa's home run chase to bring the game back. And the game is as healthy as it's ever been. Attendance numbers last year were through the roof, but I do believe that if you're going to use the term, straw that broke the camel's back, I think the Kyle Tucker contract was that straw. I think it was, the camel's back was broken long before that, if you talk to the owners, but I think that just made it. I think the owners are going to go into this argument and this debate and this fight with fan support. And that's, like I've said it to you a bunch of times. The only thing an owner hates worse than losing money is bad press. And they won't get bad press because everybody thinks it's broken. And you can make an argument that it is. You can make an argument that if I can spend 300, 400, 500 million on my payroll and you spend 38 million on your payroll, it stands to reason I'm going to have a much better roster than you. However, there've been a couple things, and I should have had this number for it, and we'll try and get the graphic for it. It just came out. There's a recent study that showed the amount of revenue teams generated and how much of that they spent on their payroll. And when you looked at the teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the winners, they had enormous payrolls, they had enormous revenue, but they were using most of that money on their players. And then when you get to revenue sharing and you have a team, and I'm using Tampa as an analogy, but that kind of ownership, or the Kansas City or something to that effect, where they're bringing in X million and only 30 to 40% of that revenue is spent in your payroll, whereas the big teams are using 60, 70, 80%.
Yeah, I think I found the one you're talking about. The Dodgers spend $515 million last year. That is $5 million more than the 6 lowest payrolls combined.
How much of that percentage was it? What was that percentage of their revenue?
It's further down in this article, I think.
What are you doing, Jax? Go, get out. Jax, go. Jax, hey, knock it off. Go. Hold on, G.
Yeah.
Go, get out. Go. What are you doing pissing people off? Oh, who's got the baseball? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're fucking fighting over a baseball.
The revenue versus payroll, you mean? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, okay. Here.
Yeah.
Is this the chart? This is 2024 to going into last year's 2024's revenue going into 2025's payroll. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah. The Dodgers are up at the top. The Mets are above them, which makes sense.
Right. But look at the argument.
Look at the Red Sox.
Right?
John Henry.
That's a perfect example. Right. $500 million, $574 million in revenue, and only 42% of that was spent on payroll. As opposed to
he has a soccer team to take care of, and
right, which Boston Red Sox fans don't give two shits about.
That's why it's funny. Like you look at the other teams, you're like, okay, well at least they're spending the money. Oh, right, yeah, Boston. But Boston has also like made a living in that, for lack of a better term, Moneyball area where they haven't had to pay the most.
Well, but if I'm a fan in Chicago with the White Sox or Miami, they had $317 million in revenue, and they barely spent 25% of that on their payroll. Now, as an owner, you have that right? I mean, look at the disparity in payrolls is far bigger than the disparity in revenue.
Yeah.
Right. You've got the Dodgers spending at $752 million, and then you've got the bottom 4 or 5 teams that 2 of them don't add up to that.
I mean, you said imagine being the White Sox. The Cubs should be just as mad that they have one World Series.
Right.
I mean, great for them. They broke their curse, but they should be ashamed. That's a shameful disparity.
You can't have it both ways. You can't scream about the disparity in payrolls when you're pocketing a lot more money because of it.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, if they care at all. Like, again,
I
know John Henry personally doesn't care.
As the player, the owners are coming into this saying, hey, you guys have to help us fix the pay structure. And the players are saying, no, we don't. Just spend the money. And the owners are saying, but what happens is, Garrett, and it's the reason they want it, franchise values will go through the roof when they get a salary cap, because fixed costs are an enormous incentive for business. If I'm the Dodgers and I know and I want to sell my franchise and I'm generating $750 million in revenue a year, and I'm guaranteed I don't have to spend more than $400 million of that.
If you have a break even as the Dodgers or the Mets or any of these teams, right? It's just Steve Cohen looks like the best guy ever right now, but that could just be the standard next year.
But think about this. The Los Angeles Dodgers in luxury tax paid more than what? 1, 2, 3, at least 6 teams' payroll. The Dodgers paid $150 million in luxury tax, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams with a payroll under that. That's the pocket money, pocket change. But I think all of that coinciding with what we just saw from Tony Clark, I think you're looking at a potential either a disastrous work stoppage, or the owners are going to get everything they want, and that will dramatically change the landscape of baseball. I don't know for the better or not, but I know work stoppage is not a good thing, and it won't be a good thing. So,
well, good note, Tandon.
Yeah. Yep, we're going to start seeing games here in a couple days. Before our next show, they will have started to play. And then who's opening in Japan this year? Is it Japan?
I think so, yeah. I think it's...
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's not Toronto and LA, right? I don't think they're doing that.
It'll be, I think that's mid to late March is when that happens.
It'll be the no, that's not the... I don't know. I'll post it on the screen. It'll be right.
Yeah, okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on next Monday. Or next Wednesday, I'm sorry.
We'll go through another division like we did last week.
Yep. All right, Bob.
All right. Love you, Dad. I'll talk to you.
Take care, guys. Love you too.